really matters? That might be the most important question you can ask. So let's talk about it. Welcome to What Really Matters podcast, Everyday Spirituality with Karen Wyatt. I'm glad you're here with me today for another episode. And we're going to be talking about a realization that I've come to over the last few weeks, which is that mortality is just a theory until you know you're dying. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot. If you've listened to the podcast over the last few weeks, you know that I have a friend who's dealing with a brain tumor right now. And so I've been on a journey with her, being a support person, being a witness, and then experiencing my own emotions as she goes through this process. And it really made it clear to me that no matter how much I have spent my time thinking about death and dying and even planning and preparing for my own death at some point in the future, there is nothing like being given a terminal diagnosis that we can experience or understand in our lives until we actually get there. It's kind of like becoming a parent for the first time when you may read all the books and you may think you know everything about what it's like to have a child. But when the moment actually happens and you're actually holding your newborn in your arms, it's like nothing you've ever experienced before, and you feel completely unprepared, no matter how much work you've done to get yourself ready for that moment. And I believe that our death is very similar. We think about it, we talk about it, we've read a lot about it, we're filling out our advance directives, we're making plans. But until we're handed a terminal diagnosis and until we are being shown the evidence that we actually are in the process of dying in the moment, I think it's very difficult for us to conceive of what that moment will be like. So it makes sense to me when I hear studies saying that advance directives aren't working that well, that here we are trying to create a plan for a fantasy of the future, for a time that we don't fully understand. We don't really have any idea what it will actually be like for us. We have no idea how it will unfold. And here we're trying to put on paper our wishes and our plans for that experience and that time. And so it makes sense, no matter how much planning we might do for the moment, we really don't know what to expect. And all of our plans can fall apart in an instant. So no wonder we hear all the time from EMTs, patients in the back of an ambulance say, "Tear up my advance directive. I want you to do everything possible to save me right now." And we hear of patients in hospitals who completely change their mind about the kind of care and treatment that they want at the end of life. So planning ahead, it's a great idea because we do need to acquaint ourselves with the reality of death, and we do need to learn as much as we can so that we're better prepared to make decisions in the moment. But we have to plan ahead and not be attached to any of our plans, because when it actually happens for us, everything may be completely different than we have imagined. And we have to be prepared to make decisions in the moment and prepared to cope with our own emotions and whatever is arising within us in the moment. So it's becoming very obvious to me that my friend is learning how to live one moment at a time. And she has certain moments when she copes with the fact that she has a terminal diagnosis, and many other moments when that's more in the back of her mind and she's focusing on living the best she can in each moment. And I've witnessed how important that balance is. The balance between cognizance of our mortality and of time slipping away from us, but also a focus on just being here and living and experiencing as much as we can from moment to moment. For me, as a support person for her, I'm also trying to be in that place of taking one moment at a time, because that is what's required of me right now. I have to be prepared that at any moment she might need someone to listen to her. She might need to talk. And I need to be prepared to drop what I'm working on and sit and be present and listen deeply and set aside whatever other issues I'm worrying about at the time so that I can fully be there in the moment, because that's what I want to do. That is where my heart lies and what I believe is the best way for me to be helpful to my friend. So again, I'm experiencing from the outside this idea that mortality is real and really happens. I'm not experiencing it for myself personally, but I'm witnessing my friend experiencing it. And I'm learning from that as I go. Still knowing that whenever it's my time and whenever I'm facing my death, it will be a totally unique experience and completely different than anything I have imagined or planned for myself. I'm becoming acutely aware of the terror and the despair of watching each moment of time slip away, and how quickly time passes and how fleeting it is, and particularly when days feel numbered, and the sense of constant loss with each moment that passes. It's another loss. But at the same time, the richness of focusing instead on how to fill each one of those moments, how to squeeze out as much meaning as possible from every single moment that there is. So though the moment will still pass, at least it will be a moment that was filled with meaning, a moment that has fulfilled its potential and not been wasted. So every single moment that I'm able to bring my attention into the present, that I'm able to be intentional about the choices I make, how I'm spending that moment, what I'm thinking about, what I'm experiencing from my heart, my emotions, every single one of those moments becomes deep and rich and becomes a memory that will last over time. So this is what I'm focusing on right now, and how I'm trying to do my best at being a support person and living alongside my friend as she deals with a terminal diagnosis. As I looked at this idea of living one moment at a time, I thought about a program I'm watching on television currently. Has a character in it who is in recovery from addiction. And the program displays pretty well how challenging it is to be in recovery, and every single moment to have to make a choice to not use an addictive substance. To every moment resist the voices calling inside of you and urging you to just become numb and give in to the power of that addiction, and to instead choose a different path. And it's actually kind of reassuring to me to watch that journey as well, and to see how really all of us in one way or another struggle with the need to simply be fully present in this moment and not try to take shortcuts, not try to numb ourselves, not try to erase what's true and what's actually happening right now in this moment. So I looked up some things about the recovery community, knowing that there's a huge emphasis on living one day at a time and also one moment at a time. And understanding that it's a struggle for everyone, whether we're in recovery from an addictive substance or not. Maybe we're in recovery from our minds that fly off into fantasy, or are addicted to the past, or focus too much on the future and worrying about the future. So I wrote down a few of the suggestions I found on a recovery website about how to live one day or one moment at a time. And so I thought I would just mention those here and talk about the fact that they're helpful to me right now. And so the first is to try to maintain a positive attitude. And so I think this means for me is being willing to find whatever is beautiful and good in every moment, along with the pain, the sorrow, the fear, and the grief that exists in each moment. To be willing also to see that there's beauty and love and joy in every moment. For me, that's what it means to have a positive attitude, not to wipe out any of the painful experiences of the moment, simply to broaden my perspective so that I can also see and experience what is positive in the moment. The second is to take on one problem at a time. I think this is great advice as well, because it's very easy for us to awfulize when we're in a difficult situation, to, first of all, imagine the problem we're coping with right now to be as bad as it could possibly be, but sometimes also then to pile on other situations, other circumstances that are adding to our misery in some way. And we do a better job of creative problem solving when we focus in on just one thing at a time. And I know I've been reading a lot about multitasking is actually not really natural or healthy for our brains, and that focusing on one particular problem or one issue at a time is a much more efficient and effective way to deal with things. And so I like that advice as well, and I think that's something I need to remind myself of oftentimes. I usually have a list of things that I'm thinking about or worrying about at any one time, but it makes sense to be able to prioritize that list and to stop reviewing the entire list, but pick out one thing at a time and focus on each thing, because we can really only be creative and come up with solutions for one problem at a time. The third suggestion was to expand knowledge in some way. And I also really love this idea because it's proactive, and whatever we do to learn something new, that expands our container again and expands our toolkit for dealing with the issues that are in front of us. So reading things, watching programs, listening to podcasts, talking with people and asking questions, anything that we do that brings us something new that we can learn that we haven't known before, increases our ability to be creative in the moment and to keep moving forward with our goal of living one moment at a time. The fourth suggestion was do good toward others. And I totally believe in this idea of paying it forward, being generous, being kind to others, because it puts us into a positive, giving frame of mind. It opens our hearts. And it also reminds us that we're connected to other people and that everyone is suffering in some way or another, just as we are. And when we're in the frame of mind of thinking of what could I give to someone else, how could I share what I have, we stay ahead of our troubles in a way, because we are focusing much more on our abundance and gratitude than we are on feeling sorry for ourselves and overemphasizing the difficulties that we're experiencing. The fifth suggestion was love yourself through meditative techniques. And I think Loving ourselves is one of the keys to all of this, to finding meaning in every moment of life, no matter what we're experiencing. And in many ways, that's the most difficult thing for us to accomplish. And particularly to love ourselves deeply from the heart, fully, for whoever we are, with all of our flaws, with our shadows, with our failures, with the things we don't like about ourselves. Because our society may teach us ways to appear that we love ourselves, but those are superficial and in some ways narcissistic activities that resemble love but are not truly deep love for ourselves. So in order to love ourselves, we have to be willing to accept everything about who we are and everything that's happening to us in this moment. And I like the emphasis on using meditative techniques because I think it's in those moments of stillness and quiet that we are genuinely able to look within and to behold all of who we are. And when we can bring love with us into those moments when we're looking at our own shadow and studying ourselves fully and wholly as whole people, that's when genuine love happens, and we can also bring more healing for ourselves as well. And the last suggestion is to step outside of your comfort zone. And I like this idea as well because I think when we're going through difficult times, it may be easy to fall into ruts and routines and do things in habitual ways because it's simpler for us. We have fewer choices to make then. But each time we can try something new, we are acting on our creativity and we're opening up the possibility for more creativity in the moment. It takes some courage to try something that's less comfortable for us. And maybe that's like talking to someone we've never met before, or doing an activity or visiting a place where we haven't been before. Maybe it's having a difficult and challenging conversation with a person that needs to take place. Maybe it's trying to forgive someone for something that happened in the past. All of those can be things outside of our comfort zone, but that can help us bring meaning and richness and depth into the present moment as we're trying to live one moment at a time. And then finally, I wanted to share with you something that has been really inspiring to me for a number of years now, which is Steve Jobs' Stanford Commencement speech from 2005. If you have heard of this, and Steve Jobs had been living with pancreatic cancer for about 1 year at the time he gave this speech. And I think he died not too long after this speech, but I wanted to just read you some of the quotes from Steve Jobs because here we are learning from someone for whom mortality is no longer just a theory, for someone facing it every single day. Every moment of his life, looking at the fact that it's slipping away from him fairly quickly. So you may have heard this before, I'm sure most people have, but I just wanted to remind us all of these words of wisdom that Steve Jobs had. He said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart." I'm going to read a little bit more of it, but I just wanted to comment here. I love that he refers to the trap of thinking you have something to lose, and that the dying process actually strips away every attachment, everything that we imagine that we own or that we carry with us or that we cherish gradually gets stripped away from us, as he described, until you reach a point that you recognize that I don't have to worry about any of those things. I don't have to worry about any of the superficial things. They're already gone. I've already lost them. I don't have to have fear. And when he says you're already naked, there's no reason not to follow your heart, because when you're that close to death, what you have left is your heart and the love and the creativity that it carries. And there's no reason not to express that, not to bring it to the world. And then Steve Jobs went on to say, no one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it, and that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. So I wanted to close this with those wise words from Steve Jobs. I love that he refers to death as life's change agent, because absolutely, life couldn't exist without death. And change is good. Evolution can't happen without change. And yes, there are changes that feel negative and frightening to us and harmful, but change itself is good, and we have to believe that it is beneficent in the long run, in the whole. Change is leading us toward transformation, evolution, transcendence. Change is leading toward greater goodness and diversity and more love in the world. So when we are faced with mortality and it's right in front of us and we can't deny it and it's no longer a theory, that's when we have to come to terms with our fear of change, our fear of death, our fear of letting go of everything we've been holding on to in life. But the moment we begin to do that, the moment we begin to take steps to come to terms with our own dying process, that's when we will find the richness and the meaning of every single moment of life that we have left. And to be honest, not a single one of us knows how many moments we have from this point on. None of us knows that for sure. So in this moment, as much as I can, I try to remind myself that I am mortal. I try to make it a reality in my own mind, but I understand it may never fully be a concept I grasp until I'm actually facing my own death in the moment. I understand that, and all these things I'm thinking and saying might completely change when that moment arrives for me, but I'm doing the best I can to bring wisdom and beauty and love and joy into each and every moment that I have to experience right now. And I hope that you will be inspired to do that as well. So until we're together next week, remember that we're here for love. That's really, I think, the most important thing we could focus on and work toward actualizing in every moment. So face your fear, be ready for whatever life brings you next, because there are always changes, always ups and downs. And just love each and every moment that you have available to you.